Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are really digging into something foundational, taking psychology right into the workplace.
Absolutely. We're looking at how the deep patterns we form early on just don't stay at home.
Exactly. Our mission today is to unpack how two major frameworks, attachment styles and the big five personality traits, interact at work. And, importantly, how they actually predict success, satisfaction, maybe even how long you'll stay in a job.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a huge meta-analysis here covering like 30 years of research, plus another article that looks at how this stuff shows up day to day. Basically a shortcut to understanding workplace behavior.
It's pretty compelling stuff.
Okay, before we dive in though, a quick but really important request for you listening. If you find value in this kind of deep analysis, please hit subscribe and follow right now. The Contrarian HR podcast and articles on Substack and on YouTube. It genuinely helps us keep doing this.
Please do. And, the context here is so vital because attachment theory, people usually think romance, partners, maybe parents and kids.
Right, the personal stuff.
Exactly. But what this research hammers home is that this system, this way of relating we develop, it influences everything. All our interactions, including with colleagues, with bosses. It shapes our professional lives profoundly.
Okay, let's set the stage properly then. Definitions first. Attachment styles. What's the core idea there?
Well, at its heart, attachment is this basic psychological drive. It pushes us to seek closeness, affectional bonds, especially when we feel threatened physically, emotionally, interpersonally.
So it's a safety mechanism, fundamentally.
You could say that. And the style that develops from our early experiences becomes a kind of schema, a mental script. It dictates two key things. One, how worthy we feel of getting support. Two, how much we believe others are actually willing or even capable of giving that support.
Got it. So it's about how I see me and how I see you, basically. Let's break down the three main styles from the research.
Okay. First up is secure attachment. These individuals have a positive view of themselves and a positive view of others. They feel worthy of help, and they generally trust that others can and will provide it. It's sort of the baseline for healthy relating.
Makes sense. Stable foundation. What's next?
Then you have the avoidant style. Here, the view of self is positive, I'm okay, I can handle things, but the view of others is negative. They tend to see others as unreliable, maybe intrusive, or just incapable of meeting needs properly.
So they pull back, rely on themselves.
Precisely.
Okay.
Leads to that hyper-independence, keeping people at arm's length, especially at work.
Okay. And the third?
That's the anxious style, sometimes called preoccupied. It's kind of the opposite pattern. Negative view of self, feeling unworthy, maybe not good enough, but a positive view of others, seeing them as capable of providing the support they crave.
So there's a mismatch. They want closeness, but don't feel worthy of it.
Exactly. And that gap fuels a lot of anxiety about relationships, a need for constant reassurance, and worry about being abandoned or rejected.
Okay, styles defined. Now let's bring in the other framework, the big five personality traits. Just quickly list those for us.
Right. The standard ones used a lot in workplace studies. Neuroticism, which is about emotional stability or lack thereof. Extroversion, sociability, energy from others. Openness to experience, creativity, curiosity. Agreeableness, how cooperative and trusting you are. And conscientiousness, which is about organization, dependability.
Perfect. One more definition before we hit the findings. Leader-member exchange, or
Yeah.
LMX. What's that measuring?
LMX is all about the quality of the relationship, the dyadic link between a leader and a specific follower. It's built on trust, mutual respect, open communication. High LMX means a strong, positive working relationship. Low LMX, not so much.
And it hinges on the follower's expectations, you said.
Yeah, the follower's perceptions and expectations of leadership really drive it. And as we'll see, attachment style heavily influences those expectations from the get-go.
All right, definitions locked in. Let's get to the meta-analysis findings. Aim 1 was about clarifying the links, right? Especially between attachment insecurity and the big five.
Yes. And the connection between insecurity, both anxious and avoidant styles, and neuroticism was really strong, very consistent across studies.
Strong's putting it mildly. The correlation, the RC value, for anxious attachment and neuroticism was 0.49. That's huge. Almost half the variance is shared.
It really is. It suggests that tendency towards negative emotions, worry, anxiety that's deeply baked into the anxious attachment schema. The avoidant link to neuroticism was there too, RC equals 0.18, but less pronounced.
And conversely, secure attachment.
Secure attachment showed the opposite pattern, negatively related to neuroticism and positively related to the other four: extroversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness. Basically, feeling secure correlates with more adaptive personality traits for work.
that link to negative emotions, to neuroticism, you'd expect that to show up in things like stress and burnout, right? If you're constantly worried.
Absolutely, and the data backs that up strongly. Anxious attachment had significant positive correlations with job stress, RC equals 0.38, and burnout, RC equals 0.32.
So that insecurity isn't just in your head, it's creating real-world strain. It's an extra cognitive load.
Definitely. You're spending mental energy managing relationship anxiety instead of focusing fully on tasks or coping effectively with workplace demands.
Okay, let's move to the core workplace outcomes. Job performance first. How did insecurity link there?
Both insecure styles showed a negative link.
Oh.
Anxious RC was negative 0.11, avoidant RC was negative 0.13, so insecurity generally relates to slightly lower performance.
Okay, a modest but clear negative link for both. But you mentioned things diverge sharply for other outcomes.
Massively. This is where it gets really interesting. When you look at job attitude, satisfaction, commitment, how you feel about your boss, the anxious style really drove the negative results.
How so?
Well, only anxious attachment has significant negative correlations with job satisfaction. RC correlates 0.10, with organizational citizenship behavior, or OCB, going the extra mile, RC equals 0.10, and importantly with LMX, RC equals 0.20. Also with work engagement, RC equals 0.14.
Wow. So lower satisfaction, less likely to help out, worse relationship with the boss, less engaged. And did that connect to leaving?
Yes. Anxious attachment was also positively linked to turnover intentions. RC equals 0.17. They were more likely to be thinking about quitting.
Okay, hold on. If avoidant people are also insecure, also have trust issues, why weren't they showing significantly lower satisfaction or higher intent to leave in these simple correlations?
That's a fantastic question. It seems to come down to their different coping strategies. The anxious person needs connection and reassurance. When they don't get it consistently at work or perceive threats to the relationship, they become dissatisfied, maybe resentful, and start looking elsewhere to meet that need.
Whereas the avoidant person,
The avoidant person's strategy is distance. They suppress the need for closeness, focus on tasks, and maintain independence. They might not love their job or boss on a deep relational level, but their core coping mechanism doesn't necessarily drive them to quit purely out of relational dissatisfaction. They might be content, in a way, being detached. Their issues might manifest differently, perhaps in lack of collaboration.
interesting. So different flavors of insecurity lead to different problems. That makes sense. Okay, this leads perfectly into the next big research question. Does attachment actually tell us anything new, anything beyond what the big five already tell us?
Exactly. That was aim 2. Given that we often use personality tests for hiring, does adding attachment style give us extra predictive power? Incremental validity.
And the answer was?
A resounding yes. Attachment styles showed significant incremental validity, meaning they explained unique variance after accounting for the big five for all the key outcomes they tested: job satisfaction, job performance, organizational commitment, and LMX.
So attachment isn't just personality repackaged, it's its own distinct thing.
Precisely. It captures something unique, especially about relational dynamics, that the big five traits alone don't fully capture.
This is the real payoff then. Let's zoom in on where attachment was not just adding value, but was actually the strongest predictor, the dominant statistics. What stood out for job performance?
This was genuinely surprising to me. You'd think conscientiousness, right?
Totally. Or maybe extroversion.
Nope. Avoidant attachment was the single biggest predictor of variance in job performance, accounting for a huge 28.9%.
Wow, nearly 30%. And anxious.
Anxious attachment was second at 19.5%. The big five traits were further down the list.
That's fascinating. So whether you're anxiously distracted by relationships or avoidantly refusing to collaborate or trust, that insecurity pattern is the biggest drag on performance, more than just being diligent or outgoing.
That's what the data suggests. It really reframes performance beyond just task focus. That hyper-independent avoidant worker might look efficient solo, but maybe their inability to integrate or delegate limits overall team or complex project success.
Okay, what about organizational commitment? Feeling loyal, wanting to stay.
Here, secure attachment was king. It accounted for 37.7% of the variance.
That makes intuitive sense. Commitment is relational. You need trust, a feeling of belonging.
Exactly. Secure individuals with their positive views of self and others are just predisposed to build that trust and feel committed.
And LMX, the leader-member relationship quality.
Attachment styles completely dominated here. They were the top 3 predictors. Anxious attachment actually came out on top, explaining 20.1% of the variance. Secure and avoidant followed.
So your relationship with your boss is overwhelmingly predicted by your underlying attachment schema, more than your personality.
According to this analysis, yes. It highlights just how much LMX is filtered through the lens of our relational expectations and anxieties.
Okay, we see the links, we see the unique power of attachment. But how does it work? What's the mechanism driving these outcomes?
AIM-3 looked at this using path models. The key finding was that attachment style seems to impact these workplace outcomes primarily through its effect on an employee's trust in their supervisor.
Ah, so trust is the mediator, the
Yeah.
middle step.
Exactly. Insecure attachment, both anxious and avoidant, tends to lead to lower initial trust in a supervisor. And it's that lower trust that then cascades down to negatively affect job performance, satisfaction, commitment, and especially LMX.
Can you give an example with the numbers, like for anxious attachment and LMX?
Sure. The model showed anxious attachment directly leads to reduced trust in supervisor. That path had a coefficient of -0.175. Then, that reduced trust directly leads to lower LMX quality. The overall total negative effect of anxious attachment on LMX was -0.202, largely operating through that trust pathway.
So if a manager behaves in ways that confirm an anxious employee's fears being inconsistent, unclear, it damages trust, and that tanks the relationship quality and potentially performance.
Precisely. The attachment style sets the stage, but the manager's behavior and the resulting trust level is the critical link.
Okay, this quantitative stuff is powerful. Let's bring it to life a bit more. How do these styles actually look day to day in an office? Let's use the insights from that supplemental article, starting with the secure autonomous folks.
Right. These are often your model employees in many ways. They generally work well in teams. They're confident, but not arrogant, good at managing their time. Crucially, they handle feedback well. They see constructive criticism as helpful, not as a personal attack.
And in terms of leadership,
They tend to emerge more naturally as leaders. They often use more relational or transformational styles, focusing on relationships, inspiring people. And importantly, they're comfortable delegating. They trust others.
okay. Now, the anxious, preoccupied employee. We know the stats: high stress, lower satisfaction. How does that manifest?
It can be challenging. Their emotions can really interfere with work. Feedback, even if well-intentioned, can feel like a personal attack because their self-worth is fragile. They often seek constant reassurance. Is this okay? Did I do a good job? Which can drain a manager's time and energy.
Do they perceive things differently too?
Yes, they might perceive negative bias or slights where none were intended. And sometimes this need for validation can lead them into workplace gossip or drama, seeking connection or information that way.
And if they become leaders themselves, that insecurity must impact their style.
It does. The research suggests anxious leaders are often rated lower on task efficacy by their teams. Their own self-doubt can make them seem less decisive or capable, even if they're trying hard.
Finally, the avoidant dismissive employees, the lone wolves.
Yeah, hyper-independent is the key phrase. They prefer working alone, can be very efficient on individual tasks because they just focus on the work, but they're not typically enthusiastic team players. They tend to keep relationships superficial and avoid workplace closeness.
Because they don't trust others to come through.
Fundamentally, yes, they rely on themselves. This also shows up in leadership. Avoidant leaders heavily favor task-oriented styles. Here's the job, get it done. They delegate much less often than secure or even anxious leaders because they prefer to maintain control and not depend on others.
Okay, bringing it all together then, what's the big takeaway message?
I think the core synthesis is that attachment style isn't just a footnote to personality. It's a really powerful, unique individual difference. It gives us critical insights, especially into those relational outcomes like LMX, trust, and commitment, that the big five alone just don't fully explain. It tells you how someone is likely to connect or disconnect at work.
And the practical implication for anyone listening, especially managers.
It's huge. You simply can't use a one-size-fits-all approach. Recognizing these underlying styles helps you tailor your management. For insecure employees, both types, the key seems to be building trust through consistency, transparency, dependability, creating psychological safety.
Right. For an anxious employee, that predictability might soothe their anxiety. For an avoidant employee, consistent, dependable behavior from a leader might slowly challenge their belief that others are unreliable.
Exactly. And by fostering that trust, you directly impact the mechanism that links their insecurity to better performance, better commitment, better relationships.
Okay, that leads beautifully to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. We've seen that trust in the supervisor is the critical link, the mechanism connecting attachment style to success or failure in organizational outcomes. So mull this over. If you recognized one of your direct reports might be operating from an insecure attachment schema, anxious or avoidant, What's one small, consistent behavior you could implement starting today? Maybe it's a predictable weekly check-in, always explaining the why behind a decision, or simply making sure you follow through every single time on a promise. What could you do to deliberately start shifting that employee's working schema towards greater trust?
Thinking about that could genuinely change the dynamic and ultimately the performance of your team.
Food for thought. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.